Welcome to the Friday edition of Once World, and today is a kind of special day, I guess. It's March 1st. March 1st is, among other things, St. David's Day, and St. David was the patron saint of Wales. Now, Wales is one of the four constituent countries of the United Kingdom, and each of the countries has a special symbol. The symbol for Wales and also the symbol for St. David is the leek. And supposedly at one time, at least according to Shakespeare and Henry V, Welshmen used to wear leeks in their hats on St. David's Day. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but you'll see images of them. And by chance, the leek is one of my favorite vegetables to cook with. Here in Cambodia, I pretty much always use leeks rather than onions for all of my soups and stews that require something in the allium range. I mean, I use shallots as well. Shallots are pretty cheap here, and I may sometimes use a combination of leeks, onions and shallots, but I'll pretty much always use leeks. If I'm making a beef and ale pie, as I did the other day, then leeks are the basis. Use a bed of buttered leeks for some broiled fish and so forth. So here's just a quick summary, not going to do anything in great detail because I've got other things to talk about today. Here's my leek soup that I made earlier. All it is leeks just softened up in a lot of butter, and then add chicken stock, and you've got leek soup, nice with some crusty bread. And what I also did later on, I took one portion out and had it for my early lunch, and then I added some light cream and made a cream of leek soup. And I could put this in a food processor and just whir it all around. I could serve it cold, very much like vichyssoise, except a vichyssoise is leek and potato soup and cream, and then blended up and served cold. But you can just do it with just leeks. So that's today. That's since St. David's Day. But what I promised to talk about today, and what I'm going to talk about today, is the question of who they are in all of these conspiracy theories about what they are doing to us. Let's talk about that. Now, as is pretty much common for me in these talks, I'm not going to mention any names. In my writing, I quite frequently talk about YouTubers who are flat earthers or creationists or anti-vaxxers or who hold some kind of conspiracy theory or other. And the thing about conspiracy theories that is really important to notice right from the outset is that the people who perpetrate them never say who the conspirators are. They always just say they, and you're left to figure out who they are. Well, as it happens, I have a long history with this conception of they, going back to a very funny book about Australian slang, an Australian dialect, by a guy called Afflebeck Lauder. He wrote two books, and his first book was called Let Stalk Stride, and I'm going to put that up on a crawl so you can see what it looks like. Let Stalk Stride. Let's Stalk Stride. And he wrote a second one called Nose Tone Unturned. Well, Let's Stalk Stride is kind of like a dictionary. It's just a series of words, except that they're not they're not correct words. They're funny ways of writing slang expressions. And the one that I always remember is aorta, like aorta, like the aorta in your in your heart. Except that he would he would use in a sentence like, "I ought to clear up all this mess. I ought to do something about it with the government. I ought to." That's what people say, but they don't say aorta. They say they ought to, or they have, or they. Who's they? Never mentioned. Now, this ought to be a rule of thumb for you, that if they are not identified, then what follows is rubbish. Now, sometimes conspiracy theorists will pick on a group that gets identified fairly frequently, like Freemasons get tagged, or used to get tagged a lot of time as the perpetrators of something bad. And Jews historically have been identified as the ones who, let's say, started the Great Plague, the Black Death, or gypsies, or some kind of outcast group by the majority who want to pin things on somebody that they don't know who's done it. So generally they'll just say they. There's conspiracy theories in the United States within the government. There's this so-called dark state, like somehow there's this infiltration of mean people doing bad things, but more often than not they're not. Well, I mean, the dark state is not identified as individuals. Like this creepy conspiracy theory QAnon has this belief that at some point Trump is going to expose all of the deep state and he's going to execute them all, or some such. Well, it's rubbish, right? You can tell that it doesn't make any sense because the people are not identified. You kind of get the feeling sometimes, let's say with flat Earth, that NASA is somehow involved, particularly because there are these people who deny the moon landings. Well, if you deny the moon landings, then you presuppose that they were like filmed in a studio and then projected around the world to an unsuspecting population. And that comes across now and again. But the idea that like the Earth is flat and the moon landings were all faked, and that all the images, all the satellite images, all of the images of satellites, and all of the video transmissions from inside, like the International Space Station, and the photographs of the Earth that come from that, are all somehow CGI, and the weightlessness is simulated by everyone being underwater. Now, I mean, there's all kinds of problems with all of this, including things that have been debunked over and over and over about, like shadows on the moon. the nature of the shadows that could not have been cast by light technology used in lighting films from the early 1970s, late 1960s. It wasn't available. And it's all easy to debunk, but the conspiracy theorists are convinced that they, and in this case it's NASA, is perpetrating the hoax. Well, what about all the other space agencies in the world? What about the Russian Space Agency, the European Space Agency, the Indonesian Space Agency, the Japanese Space Agency? There's all manner of space agencies in the world. How come NASA has a monopoly on faking things? It's just nonsensical. And so that's why you have to resort to they, because the people who are perpetrating these conspiracy theories don't know who's doing it. And actually, in general, if you hear a story that it seems like it might be true, might not be true, but the protagonists are not named, and you can't go back and check, then there's a pretty fair chance that that's nonsense. It's just something that somebody made up. And which leads me to a slightly tangential matter, which is that for some reason people are willing to believe things that are not true because they sound nice, or they sound right. They sound like, you know, they ought to be true. There's a story, for example, not sure if I'm going to get it right, about Alexander Fleming's father getting into trouble somewhere in Scotland, and Winston Churchill's father saving his life. And then the generation later, Winston Churchill comes down with some kind of massive bacterial infection, and Alexander Fleming, of course, creates penicillin and saves him. Nice story, completely untrue. Has no bearing on anything that actually happened, but it just somehow grabs the attention, and you want it to be true. And so that's the case with conspiracy theories, is that they sound plausible enough to a certain kind of gullible person who wants them to be true, and who will then defend them because they are comfortable stories, which gets into an even deeper problem that my son and I are working on right now, which has to do with how we use stories in our lives all the time to explain ourselves, to understand the world, to create a satisfying picture of how the world works. Because otherwise, the world's pretty mysterious. I mean, a lot of things that really don't make a lot of sense. And of course, we're always prone to having something happen and then something startling happening after it that is not unexpected or coincidental, and for us to say, aha, there's some kind of force in the world that's mysterious, that's making these things happen. Well, I suppose as I get older, I'm a bit of a pragmatist, but I'm prepared to accept that some unlikely things have happened in my life and have benefited me, and I can't explain them. Well, one really, really good solution to that is to say, I don't know. I can't explain it. It's better than thinking that they are doing it. That they are always looking. They are always behind your back, and you have to be careful because they might get you. Anyway, I've got another topic in mind for Tuesday. I'm not sure because my work is beginning to increase again, but I'm hoping that on Tuesday I'll be able to get around to it. Not going to tell you about it now, let it be a surprise just in case I can't get to it. But meanwhile, please like, please subscribe, and I will see you again after the weekend.